Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. We're so excited to share Spotlight Classrooms and what we do with real classrooms to really focus on student-centered coaching. Before I begin, what I'm going to do is on the chat, I'm going to put a copy to our Bitly. This Bitly will take you straight to our presentation if you want to follow along. It also has all the live links from our presentation, and so you can access all of our information if needed. So that's there in the chat. My name is Rosie Gutierrez. I am a TOA, or a teacher on assignment, for the District of Ontario Montclair School District. I am a TOA for curriculum and instruction, and I focus mainly on everything mathematics and coaching. This is my, dear Lord, this is like my 6th year in this position, and I've been in education as a teacher for about 14 years now. But my position as a teacher on assignment has really morphed from being very focused on just math to now I'm very into all the coaching. And so it's nice to see that transition in my position.
And my name is Roni Weink. I'm also a teacher on assignment at Ontario Montclair School District. I focus more on the English language arts, GATE, coaching, and I also am in charge of the Spotlight program. So I'm new to this position. So I came over in October. I'm not going to tell you how many years I've been teaching like Rosie, because it's just, so, you know, just for a long time. And I was a Spotlight teacher. So I started as that, and it's a great program. We're really excited to share it with you. And somehow I morphed into being in charge of it, which is really exciting and busy too. So just to give you a little background about our district, we are a K-8 district. Founded in 1884. We have 32 school sites, 26 of them are elementary, 3 are K-8, and we have 6 middle schools. We're the 3rd largest elementary district in the state, and we serve more than 21,800 pre-K to 8th grade students. 40% of our students are EL learners, 89% are on free and reduced lunch. Many of our schools are magnet schools, and that's sort of a newer path that our district's taken. Each of those schools they're uniquely designed to provide an option to become fully immersed in an enhanced, specially designed course of study. The school that I came from was a music conservatory, even though I am not musically inclined whatsoever. We had a full-time music teacher. There are gate magnets, dual immersion schools, and such. So this is our agenda for this afternoon, or this early evening, I guess. We're going to share with you what the Spotlight visits are. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our Spotlight teachers, what their responsibilities are and their role is. We're going to walk you through a visit. So the protocol for what the visit actually does. I'm just going to and then we'll leave some time to ask some questions if you're curious or want to hear more about our program. So this is our mission statement, and it's kind of the, our founding basis for everything we go through. So it reads, Spotlight classrooms are an internal model of instructional support which takes place during the regular school day. A team of Ontario Montclair School District teachers open their classrooms in order to be a resource for learning. While the Spotlight team is not expected to be perfect in their practice, they're willing to take a risk so that all OMSD teachers have access to participate in discussions around pedagogy. Their goal is to provide an authentic opportunity for colleagues to see firsthand best practices with our students. And I just wanted to point out the part that really convinced me, I guess, to be a Spotlight teacher. I mean, I'm opening my classroom to anyone to come in and observe me, is that I was not expected to be perfect in my practice, and none of us are perfect. And I think that's kind of the tenet that we hold as coaches, that we're not perfect. You know, I'm not perfect as a coach. Rosie's not perfect. We're not perfect, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about what I know, what you know, and move forward so we can both improve on our practice. So I love that part of our mission statement. And basically what happened was we found that with this exciting transition, we're producing these 21st century learners. Teachers haven't had experiences personally in a lot of the types of learning So these spotlight classrooms are teachers who are, they are on the edge of all this type of learning, and they open their classroom, and it allows us to provide that student-centered coaching when classroom teachers are welcomed in to see those research-based best first practices. These visitors then create a plan to incorporate the practices that they connected with into their own classrooms. So it really is an authentic experience as teachers learn and grow from one another.
So why Spotlight Classrooms? There is, his name is David Sousa. He's an author and he's an educational consultant. He's done lots of research on how the brain works and its implications for the teaching profession. And so in his book, it's called How the Brain Learns, David talks about professional development. And he talks about that in order for professional development to be effective, it needs to be job embedded and it needs to be authentic. He also says that it needs to be relevant, challenging, and it needs to provide opportunities for active participation. So when we were trying to think, what kind of professional development we can do, we thought, what's more authentic than being in the actual live classroom as the teachers are teaching. So that was kind of, the basis behind the why. And then, paired with David's research and then with Common Course push for students to be inquiry-driven led, it kind of just led to this idea that in education, specifically in PD, we're really good at an I do. Watch me, I can show you something during this PD, and then the you do. All right, now you go back to your classroom, you go do it and figure it out on yourself. But there really was a gap in the we do part of professional development. And so if we want our students to be inquiry driven and collaborate, then we as teachers should do the same. And our professional development should really allow for this to happen. And so Spotlight Classrooms really does allow teachers to collaborate with colleagues and to work together so that we do piece that's missing, so that we can implement successful teaching strategies by taking them on an inquiry-based learning experience.
So I want to talk just briefly about our Spotlight teachers. They really are educational leaders in our district. They go through an application and interview process to become a Spotlight teacher. In fact, I'm working on that right now. I just sent out all my observation dates to come and the interview dates. So trying to coordinate that right now. We add new teachers every year to our team as we continue to grow and expand. We expect them to have a growth mindset and to use our adopted curriculum to frame their teaching. I think that's really important. I know that even when I was in the classroom, I want to do those cute like bulletin boards with the TPT things, but we really want to make sure that they're using their curriculum to drive their instruction. And then when classroom teachers sign up to visit a Spotlight classroom, the teacher provides a sitting area for the visiting teacher and a lesson plan in advance. So they really know what they're going in and expecting to see. We ask the visiting teachers to remain like a fly on the wall because we really want that authentic classroom experience. So as if they were just the fly on the wall in there observing what was happening. And then we encourage our Spotlight teachers to model collaboration and accountable talk with deeper levels of thinking and questioning because that is our district focus. And in addition, the Spotlight teachers write a monthly blog that we're going to share with you. They take place in book clubs to explore current educational research. And the last book we read was Learning Targets. I don't know if any of you have read that, by Connie Moss and Susan Brookhart. So our district is really pushing the idea that we want to incorporate learning targets in every classroom. So that's one thing that our Spotlight teachers read and we had a book club regarding. We hold monthly meetings to connect with our Spotlight team, and we also hold coaching collaboratives. Actually, it says, well, we hold them every month. That's kind of the goal for next year. We were doing them this year was a unique animal. It was every other month, but our goal is to hold these coaching collaboratives every month. And we really, so in those coaching collaboratives, we have site coaches, we have our mentor teachers, and our Spotlight teachers are invited to attend as well. These coaching collaboratives consist of training and practice in student-centered coaching and coaching moves such as notice and naming, micro-modeling, some of those coaching moves. Our Spotlight teachers have the option to attend conferences to continue to improve their practice. So we do offer to pay for that. And we ask that our Spotlight teachers deliver at least one professional development aligned to best practices. They can do it at their school site, they can do it in an induction meeting, or they can do it in conjunction with one of the district TOAs, and we'll help provide some support in that. And finally, we ask all our Spotlight teachers to be fully trained in Kagan cooperative learning. So as a district, that's another one of our initiatives. We are really rooted in the belief that cooperative learning and collaboration foster skills necessary for our 21st century learners, as well as provide those scaffolds for our large EL population. So I mentioned the blog, and I just want to take a minute to spotlight the Spotlight blog. So each month the teachers write a blog, and it's open to anyone to read. And the blogs are on current, relevant, hot topics. There are a lot of teachers outside of the district that follow the blog. You can comment on that as well. We encourage the Spotlight teachers to reflect on high leverage ideas that would be helpful for teachers to improve their practice. And really impact student learning. So before they actually are publishing the blog each month, they have like a system, a check system. So they do peer review and editing, and which also promotes collaboration between our Spotlight teachers. And the thing we really like about the blog is it really takes that model of teachers teaching teachers, and the content typically focuses on one of 4 areas: classroom management, content planning, instruction, and assessment for learning. So what we tell these Spotlight teachers is tell your story through the blog. And in the past that we noticed year after year, there was a theme in these blogs. So for example, this is one that I wrote. I told you I was a Spotlight teacher. One month I wrote about emotional check-ins, and I found it to be really helpful to my students as they came in each morning. This was prior to COVID. We would do an emotional check-in. They had a little bracelet that they wore to kind of tell me how they were feeling. And I thought this would be really powerful for teachers. So I wrote this one month. And just a little side note, in the slides that Rosie gave you in our chat, these blog articles are linked, so you could read those at your leisure. Another month I wrote about my kindness challenges. So each month I incorporated these kindness challenges into my classroom, and I gave the teachers practical resources and ideas how they could implement them in their classroom. And then when we started distance learning, I wrote about how to incorporate restorative circles into distance learning to connect with students and each other. So if you can kind of see from the last 3 examples, my focus last year, it was really SEL and student mental health. It really wasn't a conscious decision. They always said, tell your story, but I just realized that my focus in my classroom was on my relationship with my students. There's just no other way to say that. Like, they were my driving force. I mean, our students are our driving force, but I really valued the relationship. So that clearly came out in my blog articles. So going forward, we're considering asking the teachers to choose one area of focus for their blogs and for the whole year to kind of allow them to go more in depth, or create a multi-part series surrounded around the same focus. And so then, of course, it makes sense that this year's blogs consistently revolved around the themes of technology and distance learning, including engagement and assessment. It seems that most of our blogs were, I wonder why, about that.
All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to walk you through what a typical Spotlight visit actually looks like. And so, a visit really starts with some pre-planning, like a pre-planning session where we focus on an inquiry to improve an instructional practice. This is then followed by the actual visit, and we try to take teachers on about 2 to 3 different Spotlight classrooms that they can observe. And then we finish this entire day with a post-planning session. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through each of these 3 sections so that you kind of get an idea of what the day looks like when we take these teachers through this Spotlight visit. So, in order to begin a Spotlight visit, either the teachers, administrators, coaches, or induction mentors will reach out to us, letting us know that, either they want to go on a Spotlight visit, or they have a team of teachers or a teacher that they want to take on a visit. And so what we do is a lot of times we'll take an individual teacher, but many of the times we take entire grade level teams, depending on what the need is on these Spotlight visits. We've also taken administrators wanting to see best first instruction. So a lot of times we'll just take these administrators on a Spotlight visit. These visits can be either a half-day visit or a full-day visit. And the district will provide the subs for the teachers so that they can really fully immerse in the day. And so if it's a half day, we try to take them to about 2 classrooms, and then they return to their classroom for the other half. If it's a full day, then we incorporate a longer planning session with the teachers at the end of the visit. There's always a trained coach that will accompany the visiting team. That kind of coaches them through the entire process. Many times this coach is the site coach. Each of our school, well, I shouldn't say every school site. Most of our school sites have a site coach. If there's no site coach that has been trained on spotlight visits, then either myself or Roni or another trained coach will lead the spotlight visit for that visiting team. But we always make sure that we have somebody that's trained that can take them on the visit. And so to request a visit, we have visitors fill out this Google form that you're seeing here in front of you. Here we really try to get an idea of what practice the visiting team or the visitor wants to add to their practice. We ask what grade levels they teach, so that we try to, pair them up with someone that teaches a similar grade level. And then we also give them a choice of different spotlight strategies. These spotlight strategies are not the end all be all, but it kind of guides the teachers that want to go on a visit in terms of what we can focus on. And then from here, we pair them up with, like I said, 2 to 3 different spotlight classrooms. And then from there, we'll go ahead and actually schedule the visit. Before we actually get into the actual classrooms, the spotlight teachers, and Roni mentioned this before, the spotlight teachers prepare this spotlight classroom lesson form for the visiting team that they either email and they make available before the day of the visit. And so this essentially gives us information that we need to know about the classroom. We get to know what grade level we're going to go see, the number of students in the class. We get an idea of the classroom demographics, including like the number of EL and SPED students that are in there. We'll get a chance to see the learning target for the lesson that we're going to be observing that day. And then, as Roni mentioned before, all of our spotlight teachers are Kagan trained. And they do use cooperative groups. And so the spotlight teacher includes in this form how students are grouped in their classrooms for the lesson that we're going to be observing. So we get an idea of how these groupings are formed. On the day of the actual visit, we try to meet with the team or the teachers for about 30 to 45 minutes before going into any classroom. And this is where we really try to hone in on the teacher's inquiry or the team's inquiry for the visits, and we try to set specific goals for them. Normally, when we take induction teachers, they come with a clear inquiry goal already in mind since they're working on it through their induction program. But this isn't always the case with classroom teachers that are not in the induction program. And so a lot of the times we have to really guide them into coming up with an inquiry goal. And so some of the questions that we might ask them is, what are you wondering? What are you trying to figure out? What does that look like? What is your evidence? Describe what the ideal situation would be. We really try to hone them in terms of what they're trying to do. One thing that we've gotten pretty good at is getting very specific inquiry goals when we get into these classroom visits. We get a lot of teachers that a lot of times we'll just throw out keywords in terms of what they want to focus on. So they'll say, oh, I want to see engagement, or I want to see collaboration. I want to see differentiated learning. But these are very broad words. And so we've gotten really good in terms of narrowing it down. So, we'll ask them, do they really mean active participation? Do they mean student dialogue? Do they mean cooperative groups? And so we've really tried to hone in terms of what specifically, because engagement can be such a big thing. And so we want the teachers to really be specific in terms of what they're wanting to see. And then once we have those inquiry goals set, then we're ready to actually go into the classrooms and visit these spotlight classrooms. We really, really try to emphasize focusing on what the teacher and what the students are doing when we're in the classroom. And like Roni mentioned earlier, we ask the visiting team to try not to talk with the students. We really want them to be a fly on the wall so that they get the most authentic visit as possible. We know, because we've been to tons of different spotlight visits, it's very, very easy to get distracted by, the pretty classroom bulletin boards or the cool tech tool that the spotlight teacher is using. And so, we have a note-taking guide that allows the teachers to really stay focused throughout the lesson on exactly what the teacher and the students are saying and what they're doing. So that's that form that you guys are seeing here in front of you. So we try to get them to focus in on what's really happening versus that cute art activity that might be in the back. There's also these cognitive markers that we share with them. They don't have to use them, but we do share these with the team so that they can mark down things that really caught their attention or something that they really loved, so that they can, come back to it easy. We normally visit about 2 to 3 classrooms, like I said, from different school sites. And so we are driving from place to place. And so a lot of times by the time we get to the end of the day and we're trying to remember everything that we've seen throughout the day, it's hard to remember. And so these cognitive markers really help in terms of, being able to identify things that they observed very quickly. Each of these visits, they're normally about 20 minutes. So we'll go into a classroom for 20 minutes. And then immediately at once these 20 minutes are up, it's followed up by a 10-minute debrief with the spotlight teacher. So normally if I'm the one that's taking a team on a spotlight visit, I'll take over the classroom and I'll allow the spotlight teacher to go outside and debrief with this team. And so this is where, the debrief really allows the visiting team to ask any clarifying questions that they might have. Or a lot of times this is where the spotlight teacher will give resources to the visiting team regarding, anything that they might've been doing on that specific day. And then each visit, like I said, is finished off with the planning session with the team and their coach. So the first thing that we do is we revisit the original inquiry that we focused on. And we ask the teachers, just what connections did they make? Did they make any connections? And so we do this by asking everyone who went on the visit, including ourselves, we'll do this as well, to circle 5 to 10 connections that they made while on the visit. We take teachers through a few protocols that allow them to really reflect on these connections that they've made, and they make predictions for their own classroom, really focusing on student learning. And so one of the things that we'll ask them is, if you were to try out, XYZ thing that you circled and you said and you made a connection with, then student learning would increase because, and so we try to get them to really predict how their student learning will increase because of this new idea that they're implementing. And then we also try to take, so once they've made all these connections and they've made predictions in terms of how it'll affect their classrooms, we also try to get them to name just at least one thing that they're considering and implementing. We know that they can't implement everything that they've seen on that spotlight visit. And so we'll get them to really consider one thing that they're considering implementing. And then this is followed by 1 to 2 things that they're going to stop doing in their classroom to allow for this new implementation to happen. We know that it gets overwhelming taking so many ideas. And so we try to focus on just a couple of doable ideas followed by something that they're going to say, all right, I'm going to stop doing this so that I have time to implement this new idea. We normally will try to ask them to, what evidence will you use or will you be using to know that you have achieved this inquiry goal? And so we try to follow up with them to make sure that they're successful in implementing these new ideas. And then when the spotlight visit is completed, we ask both the coach and the visiting teacher or the visiting team to complete an evaluation form. And that's really just for us to help us monitor, the value of the program and to indicate to us if there's any follow-up that's needed. A lot of times when we get to like the end of the day, they're like, oh, the teacher had this really cool thing, but I don't remember what it was. And so we'll use this evaluation form at the end to reach out to that spotlight teacher and say, hey, you know what, they saw this really, this tool in your school site, they really want to start to use it. Can you email it to us or can you send it to us? And so we'll use that as a tool.
So as Rosie's been talking about our visits, I'm absolutely sure I know the question that's on your mind. So I'll pause. Not good at pausing, by the way, but so the question is, how did you do this year, right? With the pandemic, how did you handle Spotlight Classrooms? So can we modify the Spotlight Classrooms for the virtual setting? That's the question. So when the year began, so here's your answer. When the year began, we really had high hopes that we would be coming back in person. We're, it's August, we started school, we're coming back in September. Oh, no, we're gonna come back in October, yeah. So that was kind of the idea. We kept putting it off. And then it became apparent that we really weren't returning, but we noticed that our teachers really needed guidance and support. Technology, and even more importantly, integrating high quality instruction virtually. So we had more teachers than ever reaching out to us for support. So we decided we really needed to launch our Spotlight Classrooms. So it really took us quite a few months to dig in and plan and figure out how we were going to do this. So beginning in January, we asked our Spotlight teachers to record 4 video lessons a month. and upload them to a form indicating a focus area. So then as requests would come in for Spotlight visits to me, I would match their requests with an area of focus on the videos. So during that time from January to April-ish, we ended up with 179 videos ranging in length from 10 to 40 minutes. So take a moment and just sink that in and imagine how long it took for me to vet the videos and then write notes to match the request. So I'm just going to show you so you can see my life here. So this is, you can see that, right, Rosie? Here's the spreadsheet. So here's the videos that came in. Here's the teacher. So here's Megan Brown. So here's her grade level. So they were, like I said, they had to give me a subject area. So some people did like engagement, that was their focus. If they chose subject area, they had to indicate which subject area their video was on. This was in math. So over here is their video. You can see that. Over to the right is their who I needed to match with that to see that, I would give them that. Essential questions, whole brain teaching. So this was how, and I mean, if I could scroll down forever, right? So that is sort of how we spent our time matching the videos. So once I matched the videos to the request, I would send them 1 to 2 videos to the teacher to watch independently with their inquiry in mind and take notes with that note-taking guide that Rosie talked about. So 1 to 2 I sent on their own. And then I would set up a Zoom time for an actual virtual Spotlight visit, and we would watch 1 to 2 videos together. And I say 1 to 2 just because of the time length that it would take. So we would watch those visits together, and then we would go through the whole process, just as if we were in the classroom. So the one thing we didn't have was the teacher, the Spotlight teacher there. We couldn't ask them to give that time as well. So what we did for the debrief that Rosie was talking about is we had 2 options. Our first was we created a Flipgrid class. So the visiting teacher could create a Flipgrid. If you're familiar with Flipgrid, it's a quick video asking questions, any question they had. And then the Spotlight teacher would record a Flipgrid response. And then the second option is we did ask Spotlight teachers to set aside an hour on Wednesday afternoons. And if teachers had questions, I would arrange for the meeting and we would do a quick Zoom to answer those questions. That proved to be a little trickier just to get everyone's schedules coordinated. So these videos really were great. They served as a great resource because the teachers could watch them more than once to really solidify their learning, which, you know, when you're in there and you're watching something, you're taking notes, you forget. There's just a lot to absorb. So the videos were great. And we did set it up so that they had access to those videos for 2 weeks only. So there was a way to share it for limited access. So they weren't given those videos permanently. And then just a quick note going forward, we are leaving this option open for next year because it was so successful. We don't know what next year holds. So we may consider doing some sort of a hybrid program where there's an option of watching videos or in person. We haven't quite solidified that plan just quite yet. And then just a quick note, we've mentioned induction and mentoring quite a few times. So our district runs its own induction program where teachers can clear their credentials. It's that 2-year program. And it really is closely paired with our Spotlight program and kind of what spurred the idea that we needed to develop a Spotlight program. So in order to clear their credential, our induction candidates must complete an individualized learning plan that includes 2 inquiries for the year. Those inquiries prompt self-assessment, goal setting, and action research centering around the CSTPs with measurable outcomes. So the induction, what we require is that the induction teachers attend 2 Spotlight visits a year with their mentor. And then we really try to match up an expert in the induction teacher's inquiry. So whatever they're working on, we try to match a Spotlight teacher who does well with that practice. And then we also, as part of their inquiry, they have to do research. And so we do require our induction teachers to research at least 1 article from the blog to put into their inquiry cycle. So like I said, it's very closely paired to our induction program. And one thing our induction teachers tell us all the time, but when they have to do all this research and all this work, it's like, oh, but they absolutely love the spotlight visits, and the blog has been something that they continue to follow and found very helpful with the articles that they read.
All right, so our entire spotlight information and everything that we have here we have all of our spotlight teachers listed along with their educational strengths. And they also have every spotlight teacher has recorded a video tutorial, like a video tour of their classroom. And so they upload that into the website. And so teachers can kind of get a tour of the classroom before they're even in there. Teachers can also find all the forms that we've highlighted today on the website. So including, you know, there's a form for conducting a spotlight visit. There's the request for a spotlight visit on there. And then all of our evaluation forms, everything's housed on this one website here. And then just a few fun facts about our Spotlight program before we open it up for questions. Our Spotlight program actually began in 2016. And since then, we've actually taken thousands of teachers on these visits. During the 2019-2020 year alone, we took a total of 533 teachers on visits before those shutdowns in March. This year, since beginning our virtual Spotlight visits, we've already taken 148 teachers on Spotlight visits. We've hosted teachers from, obviously we take our induction teachers, we take teachers from our district, but we've also hosted different teachers from surrounding districts, including Cucamonga School District and Upland Unified. So we have hosted other districts as well. And then one thing that we're particularly proud of is the fact that, you know, I mentioned that post-evaluation form that we have teachers fill out at the end of their Spotlight visit. And as of now, we have about 90% of all the visiting teachers have stated that the Spotlight visit was very impactful to their teaching practice, which we think is amazing. And I will say, and I'll add to that too, I'm a mentor as well for the induction program. And every single time I have to debrief with my induction candidates, and when I say what's one thing that stood out to you this year, Spotlight Classrooms always comes up. They really love getting to see, you know, more experienced teachers in the classroom and getting to see, you know, getting different ideas from these teachers. So that's something that we have as well. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and open it up. We have about 7 minutes left before it's time for our break. So we'll leave it for questions. So you can feel free to unmute, or if you wanna write it in the chat, we can do it as well.
Thank you so much for all of this information. I have a couple of questions. I was going to pause because I had a long list, but maybe I'll just ask a couple. Is the process of sort of observing similar for principals? Like, are they using the same forms? Are they having the same conversations? And you're holding them to the fire for the debrief, right? Because just even like, yep, love it, gotta go.
No, we do. We make them, they have to come up with an inquiry goal as well. They have to have that. We have them come up with 5 to 10 connections that they've made. The only thing that I've done differently, and I don't know if Roni's done this, when we get to that predictions part, we always say, you know, if your teachers were to implement this, or if this became a school-wide initiative, students would learn how, you know, how would students impact? So I switch it a little bit when we take administrators. I don't know if Roni, you've taken admins on Spotlight visits.
Yeah, same. The thing I will say is that they will not give up a full day. So it's always a half day. I mean, we kind of set that time frame up in advance, and it's usually just 1 to 2 classrooms. And the other thing is we don't encourage them. We encourage them to go to Spotlight classrooms other than their own school site. So that's so it doesn't feel evaluative. And then just to answer, I'm sorry, just 1 second, Angela, but just I saw questions in the chat. Yes, the Spotlight teachers get a stipend. I think we forgot to mention that. Yeah. What used to be a yearly stipend, and now they're actually time carded. So we time card them for 10 hours a month, and that includes their blog writing, their time preparing the lesson, debrief. It also includes any professional development that they are preparing or going on. So up to 10 hours a month.
Yeah, and I will say this is also funded. We're very fortunate to have a director for curriculum and instruction that really believes in coaching, and she really does, you know, push us Spotlight classrooms into all of the district funding. And I think it's in the LCAP and all kinds of, what she makes sure that she plans for it years in advance. And so we've already have funding for next year as well. So we're very fortunate to have a director that believes in this program.
And our district in general is, well, we are going through the MTSS process. And so one of the tenets, of course, is coaching. And so that's part of the avenue, how she justifies that.
Any other questions? Nancy, I can see your hand is up.
That's my hand. Hi. Thank you so much for sharing this, because our school, I say our school because I'm part of the state of California. We're in a state special school, and our teachers are experiencing so much burnout, and they're so overwhelmed. And to take this on, it's hard enough to get induction coaches. So what do you think inspires the teacher in order to participate in this as a Spotlight coach? It's wonderful that you have funding, and it's obviously a program that's tied with induction.
So I can speak to myself. So for years and years, I would have my principal and assistant principal, as soon as the posting came out, they'd email, forward it. Roni, I think you really should apply for this. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm over the top. I'm on leadership. I'm on X, Y, I know. And so I think, after so many times of them telling me, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I will tell you that there are teachers that I know that are fabulous teachers who have no desire to put in the extra work to do this. But I think in general, our teachers in our district, and I say that tongue in cheek, but I think in general, our teachers really value each other and have this mentoring kind of mindset. I wouldn't say there's one thing that will convince a teacher to do it, but I just think, what do you think, Rosie? I think that more often than not, I run into teachers who are like, how can I help the new teacher on the block, so to speak?
Yeah. And I was going to say that a lot of times, some of our Spotlight teachers come in through induction. So a lot of times we'll nudge teachers like, hey, I think you would be an amazing Spotlight teacher. You should really apply next year. And so we'll kind of, hint at them that they should be doing this. And then I see Alejandra has a question on here that says, how was this program received in the beginning? It's definitely gotten better since we started. I know in the beginning, it was sort of like, and that's really morphed within the years. And so now I feel like teams really know that it's not about me being a bad teacher. It's about me growing in education and just getting better at my practice. And so I think that mentality has definitely changed. But in the beginning, it did have that weird little stigma in there.
And then for the application, so we just flew the positions are not flown every year, but we just flew the position. The director of curriculum instruction sent out the application, and then we gave a deadline, and they applied. And like I said, we're going on classroom visits coming up, and in-person classroom visits, believe it or not. And we're having an interview. And then they also did submit the application, and they had to submit a video of their teaching. So those 4 things. And then in terms of lost their edge, so what happens if a Spotlight teacher's lost their edge? I only know of one situation where that happened, and I think there was a conversation held by the director of curriculum instruction and that teacher, and it was not framed around you've lost your edge. It was framed around you're so busy, you've taken on so much, a little nudge, why don't you take a break for a year? And then I don't know that she has applied again. So that's the only case. Rosie, do you know of another case where that's happened?
No, but I was going to say that, part of being a Spotlight teacher, like we mentioned earlier, is they do have to be a part of, that's our alarm. They do have to be part of our coaching collaboratives. And so what we do during coaching collaboratives is we really do focus on student coaching. We focus on, expansive listening, enrolling a client, just everything around student, just being able to be a good coach. And so we really do frame their mentality in terms of, you are a leader in this district and we have to hold you to certain expectations. And they get a chance during these coaching collaboratives to really practice. We do a lot of deliberate practice in these meetings. And so, we'll sit down with each other and, we'll play a scenario out and we kind of focus on some of these strategies that we're doing. And so they do get a lot of practice in terms of, growing their practice as they are through it. But yeah, I think there's that one teacher that, we kind of had to talk to, but it wasn't, it wasn't, all that bad. Angela, our emails are there, so feel free to email us if you have any questions, and we can definitely reach out for information. We also linked, so on the actual presentation, our Spotlight website is linked on there, and that has the majority of our information as well. Roni, do you know how many Spotlight teachers we have right now? I know one of the questions says, how many Spotlight teachers did you start with?
Yes, so this year the number actually went down. We only had 9. We had a couple take a break this year. This year was a lot. So we're hoping to hire 6 more. So typically we try to have pie in the sky, we want 2 at every grade level. So remember, we're K through 8. So, or TK, pre-K actually through 8. Yeah. So we try to have 2 per grade level, but that doesn't always work out that way. And, a lot of the conversation on the Spotlight visits centers around, this may not be your grade level, but good teaching is good teaching. So let's look at the practice and not actually like the lesson necessarily.